Hi, I'm Maya from Book for Dreams, and welcome to a new video. If you saw the thumbnail or the title, you know that I have read 3 books by Kingfisher, and I'm going to talk about them. I first heard of Kingfisher here on BookTube. I haven't read anything by them, and I was very intrigued because everyone keeps saying how good their writing is. So I was like, I am participating in NaNoWriMo. I have to read a bunch of books. Let's try Sword Heart for the first time because I had it on my phone as an audiobook. I was like, okay, let's try it. And after that, I went on to read What Moves the Dead, a novella, and I read Nettle and Bone, which was a novel that came out this year. So I started with Sword Heart because I've been hearing about it for a little while now, and now I think most recently Riley Marie read it, and she really liked it, and I was like, okay, great, I'm getting my hands on it and I'm reading it. So I started with Sword Heart. Now, Sword Heart is a cozy fantasy adventure story. If you've read Legends and Lattes, I think Sword Heart would be a great sort of continuation of that cozy, fantastical feeling. In this story, we follow Hala, who has basically starts the story with, I have to kill myself, and she says why. So basically she lives in this small medieval town. She has lost her uncle, and the uncle has unexpectedly left all of his possessions, his house, his money, his everything to her, and now her relatives, her aunt and her son, are basically just, they have imprisoned her in this house in hopes to convince her to marry the cousin, basically the cousin of her late husband, so that the money would stay in the family and they can take over. And her only solution from that situation was to kill herself. So in her room she finds this sword, and when she takes the sword out of the scabbard, out comes this sword guy whose name totally escapes me now. So basically he is an ancient warrior who has been imprisoned in the sword to serve the wielder of the sword, and in that case that would be Hala. He rescues her, basically takes her out of the house, and the two of them go on this adventure to figure out how to deal with her current situation. And her basically goal is to reach this. There are many religions in this world, and one of them is the rat god. God's priests basically are lawyers and such, so people go to them with whatever legal problems that they have. That's the story, and there's adventure and there's stuff and there's romance. What I liked about this story, first of all, it's cozy. It was so cozy. It was great. The characters are older. Now I'm putting this in quotation marks because Hala is in her 30s and the sword guy is in his 40s. That's not that old. But yes, they are older, they're more mature, which makes them not prone to stupid decisions, which is great. Then there is a sweet romance in this one between Hala and the sword guy, of course, which builds, and it's not like immediate, you're the one and whatnot. It builds because they are two completely different characters, and they have two completely different personalities, and they somehow come together. Hala is just filled with questions and curiosity because she has spent most of her time, most of her life, sort of sheltered from the not harsh realities of the world, because she has experienced loss because her husband died and poverty and whatnot. But she doesn't know much about fighting and whatnot. And the sword guy has been in the sword for many of hundreds of years, and has he's a bit jaded, and finds Hala a bit sometimes frustrating to deal with because she has a million questions. But they grow closer, and they have this sweet romance throughout the book, and it was really it was sweet, and I enjoyed it a lot. There is humor. I mean, the sword guy has a very dry wit, and Hala has this ability to get out of sticky situations by asking a lot of questions and pretending to be really stupid, pretending to be like a helpless woman who doesn't know what she's doing, and she basically bombards whoever they meet with this inane story of something, and just the number of guards that they've passed because of her inane talking was really fantastical, and just the way that she deals with situations is really, really leads them into really funny situations. There is also a sort of horror element to this story, which I guess goes to the world building of the whole world. Basically there's this like disappearing hills or woods that is taken over by this white filmy things that wants to get into you, like sort of slime thing that wants to get into you and controls you, which is very similar to something that's happening in Kingfisher's novella What Moves the Dead. And it's so creepy and so scary, and I think it goes to this bigger world, because in this story there were mentions of demons and paladins who fight the demons. It makes the whole world seem bigger and scarier. One thing that I didn't like about the story is the third act conflict, which is completely stupid. Our sword guy has the reasons why he is in this sword. This is a dual perspective story, so we hear stuff from his side and from Hala's side. So basically, the reasons he's in this sword because he did something unforgivable, whatever. He did something bad with his mercenary band. So when he tells her that, she has this sort of very strange reaction to it. It's like, and my thought was, why is that important to you now? Like, you have spent, like, this person, you've met him, like, he lied. He didn't specifically tell you the reason why he was in this sword. He was enchanted by this evil sorceress woman witch thing. She knows the history. She knows like all the stuff that he's been through because he tells her stuff. All that he's been tortured and whatnot. So her finding out that at one point when he was a mercenary, 1 billion years ago, he changed sides, and that is why he was cursed by this king who won the battle of whatever, It just, the reaction to that was a bit, in my opinion, a bit extreme, but whatever. Everything worked out in the end. So that was the first T. Kingfisher story that I've read, and I just really, really enjoyed it. And that sort of hyped the author more for me. So when I read What Moves the Dead, and then when I read Nettle and Bone, I was a bit disappointed. So What Moves the Dead is a horror novella. It's a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's story, The Fall of Usher House, which I haven't read, but I did Google what the story was about after reading the retelling. And the thing is that Edgar Allan Poe is an author who wrote during the Gothic period. I do not care for Gothic anything. Fiction, horror, romance, nothing. I just don't think, I don't really care about the whole building of spooky atmosphere, which wasn't really all that spooky, and trying to create tension because it's Gothic. I don't care. So this novella wasn't going to work for me. It wasn't going to be something that was going to be like, oh my god, so good. So basically the story is similar. We follow Easton, who gets a letter from Roderick, Usher, that his sister might be dying, and Easton goes to visit them. And when he's there, he basically sees that the house is in ruins. There's spores and stuff and mushrooms everywhere. And when he sees Madeline, the sister, and Roderick, the brother, he can see that something's happening to them, that they're both, Madeline specifically, suffering from something. And, while Easton is there, he also meets an American doctor who is a guest of the Ushers. He also meets a British old lady who's basically into mushrooms. Everything's about mushrooms. So if you haven't like thoroughly looked at the cover of this story, which is fantastic, it's a great cover, and you would be like, oh yeah, okay, so I get it. It's about the mushrooms. Everybody's talking about the mushrooms, So basically, the concept was that there is something living in the forest, in the lake, in the water of this house. That is basically slowly taking over other living creatures, and then Madeline. Basically, that's the story. It was very like on the nose. It's not spoiler because you get it from the beginning, right? So the tension being built there is watching different rabbits or hares walking weirdly and just basically standing and looking at you, and you're like, okay, so there's something wrong with the hair, something's taking over and whatnot, and you guess it everything from what the other characters are saying. So you have this genre mashup in this story of horror, fantasy, a bit of sci-fi, but yeah, it was fine. Then I went on to read Nettle and Bone, which is a fantasy novel that came out this year. In this story, we follow Mara, who is a third daughter in the royal family of this small country. And basically, her older sisters are married off to this, I think, northern prince, as like an alliance so that they wouldn't attack them and whatnot. So the royal prince first married the oldest sister, and then she mysteriously died. And then he married the middle sister, who is now basically getting pregnant all the time and trying to give this prince an heir. And so since Mara is the youngest, she's sort of sent away to live in a convent. So, there wouldn't be any, if she got married and had children, that there wouldn't be any like conflicts about who's going to sit on the throne or whatnot. So Mara discovers that her older sister is being abused by her husband and decides that she wants to do something about it. She wants to rescue her. So to do that, she goes to a grave witch, and she gives her 3 impossible tasks, which she does like in the first third of the book. So the rest of the book is basically Mara and the grave witch and the companions they find on the way, one of them being a former knight and the other being a reluctant fairy godmother. There's also a chicken with a demon in it and whatnot. Basically them going on this quest to save the sister by killing the prince. And it is very similar to the other stories that we follow an older character in her 30s that doesn't really have a lot of life experience and going on this quest to do something extraordinary. And she's surrounded by wacky characters and zany characters who do and say wacky and zany things, and it's just that's where the humor comes from, and that's what sort of pushes the plot forward and keeps you engaged. The prose is very simple. The story is, it's basic and, it's easy to follow. It was fun. It was a fun read. But I think this one was missing a sort of point of view character, because in Sword of Heart, we follow the story from the point of view of Hala and the sword guy. And in this one, it's only from Mara's perspective. And she's very she frets about things a lot. It could be a bit much. What I did like, there was a bit of romance, but very low key. And also this one had a lot of darker themes than what I've read in her fantasy. I mean, I know that Kingfisher also writes horror, but in all the fantasy books that I've read, so I guess the 2 of them, this was the darkest. So because you have themes of murder, domestic violence, miscarriage, death, and just enslavement, because our former knight was technically a slave until Mara rescued him. So overall it was fine. So after reading 3 books by T. Kingfisher, what have I learned? I've learned that her stories are similar, that they have a sort of a similar formula that they follow. So you have this sort of older character and that surrounds herself with zany, funny supporting characters, and they go on this quest and they do stuff, and there's some interesting situations and whatnot, and there's a bit of romance in each of them. I am going to continue with this author. I want to see how the story in the Sword Heart universe progresses, and what happens in that world. That is something that interests me the most. But yeah, overall it was, I went into this hoping I would love all the 3 books, and that didn't happen. So I guess the hype for Sword Heart is real. I'll just tell you that one was really good. All the other ones you're just going to have to read for yourself and see how you like them. Have you read anything by this author? If you have, please do share your thoughts down below. Press the like button if you like this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. There are some links in the description box for you to check out. And that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!